I had a bit of a reputation of being a bit of a rank star in scrims back then. Especially early in my career, I always thought like I am the best. And so when I hear people saying like, yeah, you might be top 3, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm a little offended by that. Like, you know what? Yeah, that's, to be honest, like that was like very devastating to the team. It now wasn't just about me. It wasn't just being selfish and raising myself up. I was now raising up my younger brother as well. It actually meant so much. Like, I don't think I've ever been as excited in my entire life as I have before I was getting on that plane to Copenhagen. Winning those games, it always felt so good because it was like finally like we're in this. It weighed heavily on everyone to the point where we were getting impatient with each other about the, you know, the smallest, stupidest things.
Welcome back to another episode. Again, Untitled Podcast. Got no clue where we're going with this one, but I know where we're going with this episode. And it's down memory lane. We welcome Mitch Sageon, Sage, a veteran in OS, a player that, weirdly enough, Sage, I've become good friends with you over the last couple of years. I feel like we slowly bonded in the last 2 or 3 years, but welcome to the podcast.
No,
You're
thank
retiring.
You. Thanks for having me. Yes, I am retiring from playing. Yeah, no, time to pack up the mouse and keyboard. And we have become very good friends. I think me living in the same city might have had something to do with it, maybe.
That definitely helped.
Yeah, but no, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
No, of course. So today, this episode, we're going to be talking about, I guess, your past career now and the incredible achievements that you have managed to collect over the course of about 4 years of like really solid tier 1 play. But you said in there just very quickly before we even dive into, I guess, the playing career, you said that you're hanging up the mouse and keyboard for the player side. So what does that mean for you from now on?
Currently, I'm working with GG as kind of a jack of all trades, I guess you could say, doing managing. So I'm sorting out logistics in Australia, and I'm also going to be a bit of a performance coach for the team. So Titan is going to handle the in-server. I'm going to handle out of the server. Yeah.
Wow. So where does, I guess my big question there is, where does that drive come from? Obviously the management side, I think most players will either move into talent work management or maybe they'll just disappear entirely. But the performance coaching side of things, that's an interesting one.
I'm not a genuine performance coach. I don't have a degree or anything like that, but I'm more just, managing the team environment kind of thing. And it comes from, I think I was kind of doing this as a player, as a captain, like a mentor to the younger players, leading the team. And I think it's a natural progression that I could do that job a lot better if I'm not in the server. And so, it's not a big leap for everyone to want me to do that job when I say that I don't want to play anymore. So, that's...
Honestly, I kind of expected a message saying, hey, I'm getting into analyst work. Let's get this going. Because the last time we had you on for some analyst work was back in the gauntlet when it wasn't really analyst work, but it was more on camera. I will admit, for someone who is quite reserved, you are very good on camera. I've got to give you props there.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I absolutely hate it. I don't think I could do what you do. I'll be honest. Analyst work is not for me. If I have nothing to say, then I won't say anything. That's my weakness.
And that's probably, look, if you were paired with Jake's and Oxford Diddy, for example, that'd be fine because he would waffle when you wouldn't.
True.
But, no, look, I've always thought of you as a man of few words, but the words that you say have more meaning in them than an entire sentence coming out of my mouth. So, and it's probably even showing right now with some of the waffle that's already hitting, and we're not even 5 minutes into the podcast. But let's take it back in time. Let's Marty and Doc this baby.
Sure.
Your first, I guess, step into Siege. Where and why did you decide that Siege was going to be the game to kind of pursue in even some sort of a competitive sense?
I really like Siege on Xbox. I only ever played casual, but that was because I kind of knew that console Siege, well, at least back then, wasn't very serious. And I played the game to the point that I really liked it, and so I bought a PC just to play Siege. And I remember watching Pro League. It was the first esport I ever watched. I really liked the game, and eventually I just stumbled on a broadcast, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. I want to do this. So, watching Fnatic go compete in Brazil and beat Evil Geniuses, that was very inspiring, I think. Led me to want to do that myself, compete on the big stage, and I bought a PC just to do that, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah. And that was on the back of watching that broadcast, or did you already have
it's
like
one of
kind
the
of an idea?
Broadcasts. I think the first one I ever watched was whichever Pro League finals it was that Kanto Raketti was on Ents, and he carried his team against, I can't even remember who. But that was one of the pivotal inspirational ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, like, kindred spirits in that respect. I think I went to IEM 2017 now, and for the first time, I watched all the games live, in an arena. And I remember watching, I believe it was Uber Shouts who was like hosting that portion of it, and they had your sponges and everyone. And I looked up and I'm like, that looks like so much fun. Whatever the they're doing, I am in for a penny, in for a pound. So it's interesting that you've kind of come from like a background of watching a broadcast and then getting more into it. So.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting more into it, where does that first step come from? You buy the PC, right? You become a PC gamer, if you will.
Yep.
But where does that first step come from? How do you start to take the path toward competitive?
To be honest, that is a very good question. I can't exactly tell you who I played with and what I did, but what I can tell you is one of the first things I did after playing a bit of ranked, getting to know some people, getting some stacks together, was start playing 10-mans. And in my first ever 10-mans game, one of my teammates was Juicy, actually. We talk about it a lot. Like, neither of us knew what we were doing at all, but that was one of my first games. And you just play your way up through that. Like, eventually you network, you meet more people. Like, I met Juicy in my first one, become friends, play more, and then he knows some people. And I think one of the other big people that I knew was Punisher. You know Pun?
Yep.
Used to play for.
I do not remember Punisher. I'll be honest with you.
Mind Freak. Yeah, he played at one of the first. Well, the first 6 Invitational. I became good friends with him. Eventually started playing with some of his friends, including like Aces from Fnatic. So basically, networking, but also a lot of practice, a lot of time and effort.
Networking.
And
Jeez.
I think humility is very important in working your way up the chain. I think for current pros to look at a new player, they don't want to look at a new player that thinks he's already good enough. They want to look and see a player that's hungry and wants to get better. That's what I did.
So, what are your thoughts on players like your Logics of the world? What are your thoughts surrounding them? Do you reckon they need to pull their head in, or do you think that there's a fake ego that's needed to an extent?
You need to be confident. That's the thing. Like, if you don't believe in yourself, then you're not going to play well. And I actually have the opinion that if you're already in Pro League, like Logic was, you're playing at the highest level domestically, you talk your shit, you do what you want. Like, that's my opinion. Like, I don't have a problem with that at all. It's more about when you're just starting, you're encountering people in ranked or 10-mans, and you're getting a bit of an ego on you. Or if it's your first season and you're shit talking before you've done anything, you need to put your head in. But if you're there, like Logic, he had a great season that he was talking all this shit. I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah.
Would you, like, looking back, let's say your brother, Brendo, was saying, oh, look, I want to leave the roster at the moment, and you're looking at Logic having a stage the way he did. Would you have ever considered picking him up?
I think you would have to, yeah. If we were making a roster change, that guy was, like, outside of our team, that stage, if I remember correctly, like, by far and away the best player in the region that stage. So, yeah, you'd be stupid to overlook him, I think.
Well, look, I was waiting for some clickbait there, but I think you've done well. You're a political man by nature, whether you mean to or not. Look, speaking of Tier 1 making your mark, you made yours back in, I believe it might have been 2020, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even earlier than that.
I think Pro League was 2020. Challenger League was 2019.
Challenger League. Let's start with the baby step, shall we?
The Challenger League didn't go very well for my team, unfortunately. But we were trying. It's all steps to the journey. I think we came second last. We didn't do too well, but yeah, it's important to play even in the early stages. Get your name out there. Get the experience of playing in a broadcast. My Challenger League team failed very badly, so. If you're an aspiring player, I hope you do a little bit better than I did. But yeah, even if you're failing in the early days in terms of winning, it doesn't matter. It's all experience. That's all.
Don't be discouraged, hey.
But in terms of my Pro League debut, I think that went very differently. Straight up into Knights, basically, from
insane.
LPL. And had a great first season. We came second to Wildcard, who at the time were absolutely dominant. Nothing to turn your nose up at. I think I actually came into that roster, they were already second, so I didn't really make that much of a difference. But eventually, a couple months later, we overtook Wildcard for the number one in OS. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess let's talk about the Knights pickup
Sure.
because for a lot of players they either build with a team or they like you get picked up onto a roster that's already doing quite well. How did that conversation come about? Because to go from second last in tier 2 to
Yeah.
then going on to one of the biggest rosters in tier 1, where does that transition happen? Is it a discussion like
Okay.
is it juicy, for example? It's like, hey, 10-man, I remember
To be
you.
honest, networking is a very big part of it. And just having that link, that I don't think that's why I got picked up, and I think Juicy would kill me if he knew I said that. But it is a very big part of it. Just knowing like
Sure.
someone on that team knows that you're a normal human. You're humble. You're a professional, like willing to be professional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think the key thing was that in the time from Challenger League all the way to a year and a half later getting picked up by Knights, I was scrimming like every week, constantly with my
Yeah.
teams. Like pro teams love scrimming Challenger League teams because they're not an opponent, and
Yeah.
they're not half bad a lot of the time. So I was scrimming every single pro team. Everyone kind of knew who I was. I think I had a bit of a reputation of being a bit of a rank star in scrims back then. Just
Sure.
running around Ash Jaeger and just trying to kill everyone. That is definitely what I did, by the way. I can't say I don't recommend that, but yeah, maybe don't do that if you're an aspiring player. But it worked for me eventually. And I think there was a month where I was practicing with a different pro team, and we played Knights a lot. And I think during that time, I probably averaged 15 to 20 kills a map constantly against every team.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
eventually, I think Knights got the call up from Strider about a week before the season saying, "Hey, I'm retiring. You need to find someone else." And then I was, basically straight in. Yep.
So the jump from tier 2 to tier 1 team that you were scrimming with, is that correct?
Yeah, scrimming against, yeah.
Okay, and then you've jumped on to Knights there.
Ice,
What
yeah.
what was the biggest difference between the rosters you'd worked on and coming into the Knights environment that were paid, professional?
I think the biggest difference was that you don't have to do everything. Like constantly in the Challenge League teams, I'm the one leading the team, like doing any strategy, anything that's being made up about the team, either before the game, after, debriefs, anything like that. Even in the server, you just Challenge League. You get a mix. Some people don't want to talk. Some people don't want to work as a team. Some people just want to do their own thing. But I came straight into a really good professional like kind of outfit in Knights, and all of a sudden everyone's doing their part, and it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I can just do my thing, which is play the game. Yeah.
So what's the most important part? And this is probably for people who might be watching this thinking about kind of giving it a crack and
Yep.
potentially taking a step into the professional tier 1 scene. What is the difference between, that tier 2 and tier 1 outside of, everyone kind of chipping in as an individual?
Yep.
What's important to bring into an environment like that?
I think as an individual, outside of what you're doing in the server, you need to be a professional at all times. I think that's super important, something that's undervalued. Like obviously there's going to be skill differences between tier 2 and tier 1, but assuming that you're a good player in tier 2, the one thing you need to do is make sure you're a good teammate as well as a good player. Because if you end up getting a trial from any tier 1 team and they get a hint that you're a selfish player, you don't value your teammates, you're going to only do the things that you want to do in the server, they're not going to pick you up. You need to be unselfish as a player, and you need to be willing to be unselfish to further the team, basically. You need to put winning above everything else and make that known.
So moving out of, I guess, the very start of Knights, because, you came on toward the end of 2020. So
Yeah.
for people following the timeline, I'm not even going to take a guess as to when you started playing Siege to when you first took your step into Challenger League. But 2019 is your first Challenger League kind of moment where you're competing in a structured tournament.
Yep.
We then kind of move on about a year, and all of a sudden you're getting picked up by Knights who, dropping a formidable, well-known player in the region. Strider was a very well-known player up until that point. Well, not dropping, he was retiring, I should say. You then kind of step into his shoes and finish out the year of 2020, which was an interesting end to the year because all of the formats were kind of shifting away from Pro League and into this new format that we had called APAC South.
Yep.
Which My God, did that do wonders for our region, regardless of ping issues, which we might even get into a little bit here. But you guys start 2021 with a bit of a bang all across the board. You perform well in APAC South, you perform well in the Oceanic Nationals, OCN, and also the first rec tournament that we ever ran way back then. You guys kickstarted that year really well, first, second amongst the mix of it, but you never really dropped out of second place.
We started really well. I think that was the period of time that I was IGLing the team, actually, leading the team.
Ooh.
But I think we had a really good roster, there's no doubting that, but so did the other Australian teams. I think the thing that separated us, to be honest, was Picnic, our coach back then, kind of realised the way the meta was heading before a lot of teams around the world did. To be honest, like instead of playing this structured, thought out on paper kind of Siege, we were playing this dynamic kind of split theory, people call it now. Like we were doing that, years ago. And I think that translated really well against the APAC teams that we were playing against in APAC South. That basically carried us to success. We had a system, we followed it. Like I said, 5 professionals, everyone very disciplined, and it worked really well for us.
So that would have been a little jarring as well, though, right? Like you've come from the end of 2020, which was heavily util meta, like 20-second meta. That's where all of that world sat. How did you as a player find the change to the meta? Because it was very, as you're saying, that was a really jarring time for a lot of teams. Coming out of the 20-second meta, we saw huge pitfalls in teams because teams just didn't know how to approach the new game, the new style. As we started to see utility get changed from defensive operators to attacking operators, the complete game just shifted attention. How did you find that moment as it kind of progressed throughout 2021?
I think removing the 20-second meta made it so it raised the skill ceiling a lot. Like there's no doubt about it. You have to be a good team that can communicate well. It's not just about clearing a shield anymore. You have to basically be dynamic. You have to win your gunfights. You have to think your way through the round instead of like, all right, we need 3 flashbangs here and an Ash charge. And I think for us, that benefited us a lot. I think for me, that helped me a lot, to be honest, because at that time, I was probably one of the highest mechanical skill players in the region, if not the world, if I could be a little bit cocky there.
Please, for the love of God, I've not heard this out of you. Be as cocky as you want, Sage.
At that point in time, I was doing 3 hours of aim training a day, including Terrorist Hunt, Aim Lab, whatever. I was like very sharp, very, very sharp, even compared to now. And I think that helped me a lot. Like all of a sudden it became very gunfight focused, very dynamic. You get gunfights at any point in the round, not just the last 20 seconds. And I think that really freed me up to play the game I wanted to play. As well as being IGL, I could kind of be on the front foot, do what I want. And then if I make a mistake, it's like, oh, my bad. That's it. Like no one will care. I'm not ruining someone else's plan. I'm ruining my own. I think that helped. Yeah.
There is no denying that you were a mechanic beast back in the day. And I'm going to say, realistically, up until like the last year where you did not have to have the reins in a mechanical sense, I think that held true throughout 2021, 2022, 2023. Before we kind of get throughout those years, I have always made this discussion point, and whether I'm right or wrong, I don't really know. I think I had a conversation with Vincier about this, just about kind of the 20-second meta and that shift between that and then more aggressive playstyle to split theory.
Yeah.
I really felt like in that moment, Siege as a whole, all teams, all players were kind of tunnel visioned a little bit more so on the idea that the 20-second meta was the way to play. I mean, you kind of look to like the Brazilian scene and maybe the Japan scene, and they were a little more aggressive, and that worked for them at international events every now and then. But I guess how necessary was it for you as a player to realistically be diving into a meta so deeply like that?
I think you're right. I think most teams just thought this is the way we have to do it. I think it comes down to having your strat on paper and just executing. That was the old way of playing Siege. Is like you might have a ton of strats, but like let's say you're playing Cafe, you're doing a piano take. First thing is to clear piano. And during that meta, the big battle was always around the shield on Pixel, because you can't clear piano if there's a shield on Pixel. So teams would stand there and take half the round to clear that shield. ADS or my discs, like whatever. But to be honest, I think it was tunnel vision. Like if we use that as an example, nowadays teams will see a shit on Pixel. Even if they want to hard commit to a piano take, they they know, like, even if we don't clear this, we can make this work. You know, there are other ways to solve problems rather than just clearing that util. I think people got a bit spooked by the deployable shield change that basically made it almost like a mirror. Like, you can see through it and then pop up and shoot someone, but realistically that doesn't have that much impact on the game. And so I think you're right. Yeah, people were tunnel visioned. I think there was a cameraman quote from around that time. He was on FaZe. He said, "Why would we clear a shield when we can just go around it?" And that sounds like, ridiculously simple, but no, it's very true. Like, there are so many other ways to deal with problems than just to clear the one thing in front of you. And at that time, at least in OS, most teams would just clear the shield for 2 minutes. And that's all they would do. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I remember that time was really interesting. There was a YouTuber, I cannot for the life of me remember his name, but he used to do Pro League breakdowns on like different shield plays in the 20-second meta. And then I think he stopped doing it because he was getting shitty with the state of the game. But I think from a perspective of a host and someone who was a viewer of the game changed for the better in terms of entertainment. Now, is it still more entertaining than what it could be? I don't know. I'm not going to weigh in on how entertaining the format or the meta is of the game, but I feel as though as the years have gone on, we've very quickly gotten into something that's a lot more viewable than 2.5 minutes of clearing an entire map for a 20-second rush. But that was always, look, to be fair, that was how it was played. And then all of a sudden, 2021 hits, things change. You start really dominating. And I think that this is when, realistically, you just became like one of the go-to players in OS. Whenever we started talking about, who the best players in OS were, who were doing well kind of internationally, at least in an APAC South level, your name was constantly in every single discussion. It was brought up top 3, no matter whether it was APAC South or OS. How did you deal with that from just like, these changes are so rapid. We're talking in the case of like, from 6 months, you went from Challenger League to Pro League. Then you went from being in Pro League to being the best in Pro League. How did you grow with those changes?
To be honest, I didn't think about it that much. I don't really, like, my whole career, I haven't gone too deep into watching broadcasts, listening to, analysts. Like, no offense. I appreciate your work.
Please, for the love of God, don't ever listen to it.
No, yeah, but I've never gone too deep into it. And to be honest, even when I have, this might sound a little bit arrogant, but like I said earlier, you have to be confident. I always thought that I was the best. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, especially early in my career, I always thought, like, I am the best. And so when I hear people saying, like, yeah, you might be top 3, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm a little offended by that. Like, you know what I think that's how you have to think. Like, especially if you're a fragger in the scene, and you think, yeah, I might be number 5, like, no, that's a problem, I think. I think you need to back yourself against literally everybody if you really want to, be confident once you get into the server. So, yeah, basically, I didn't deal with it because... yeah, I kind of expected it, to answer your question.
Yeah, I mean, I completely respect that point of view. It's kind of a point of view that I think most have to have whenever it comes to performance. No matter whether it's in-game, out-of-game, I think you do have to have that kind of mentality. And we've seen what happens to players who lose that mentality along the way. They're just not the same player.
That's right.
I mean, it's talked about so frequently.
You could definitely say that about me in my career arc as well, especially the last year, becoming more of a supportive player. I think, like, I never lost the competitiveness or the hunger or anything like that. But for me, the game changed a little bit from just being like, I want to be the best player, to now it's like, I have my brother on the team, I have other young players who really look up to me. I need to also be a mentor, and I need to raise these guys up as well. And that was, like, that almost took over in terms of priorities for me. Yeah.
A fatherly figure, Sage.
You could say big brotherly figure, maybe.
Yeah, we'll say big brother. That sounds a little better than that's a little weird connotation. Look, I agree with a certain extent of that, but I also look at it regardless of whether your brother was on the roster or not. Or I really feel as though, like, you were the number 1 player for 3 years on every roster that you were and I'm talking about Fragger, okay? When I mean number 1 player, I always talk about Fraggers. I'm not talking about what they do for the team or to the team. I'm mainly talking about their impact, kills in the server, and how you open games up. And you were always the number 1. And then 2024 hits, but like there are so many pieces to that puzzle that come together. Wedables has 6 months on the roster, gets comfortable. Odah starts playing better, more comfortable. Fisho takes over a primary role that just never needed to really, I guess, worry about from there on out how the game looked, because you had trust in a firm leader. So the game completely changes. But from your perspective, did you lose that I'm the best player in the region, regardless of your confidence, regardless of whether you move to a supporting role? Can you honestly sit there and tell me that throughout 2024 you still weren't thinking I'm the best player here?
2023, the first year with Team Bliss, of course, I definitely still thought that, and I mean that was true, especially stage 2 Atlanta. You think about that. But I think that did change in 2024, if I'm honest.
Okay.
I think 2024 was a bit of a turning point for me. I can't really explain why, but I definitely in 2024 I definitely recognised that Brendan is a lot fucking better than me. Like, wait, am I allowed to swear? I hope I am.
Of course.
Yeah, that's all good.
Fuck oath you are, mate. Come on.
No, Brendan is a lot better than me. I think that says a lot about his progression, especially at the Invitational. I think at the Invitational he was like a genuine top 10, top 5, I don't know rating wise, but he was like a genuine star at SI. Like, we placed top 8, he was 6th or something in rating. He's really good. Like, I think that really undercut that mentality for me, but I was okay with that in a way. Because I had a different role to play on the team in 2024, and to be honest, I didn't need to think like that to play kind of a supportive in the server and out of the server kind of role. So yeah, it did change.
No, that's totally fair. I think that we will definitely jump back to this discussion about the brother taking over, your brother even joining the roster, but I don't want to get too far ahead because there's still quite a large chunk of time between where we're discussing now and 2023, which was the turn of the Blast era. So let's talk about the major that never was. Let's talk about Mexico. Let's talk about the heartbreak that was pushing through all the obstacles, all of the barriers, all of the teams throughout APAC South to make it to a major. Only for was it COVID that stopped it?
Yeah, it was. It was it was impossible to get out of Australia at that time. So yeah, that was the first major in the COVID era. Like, it had been so long. We'd played mini majors, we'd played regional finals, everything like that, and we played really well. Like, we as Knights first year APAC South, no one really thought that those teams were going to do very well because of ping and because everyone just valued the C's teams more. But we came second. We only lost one game, the final game. We got smashed in that one game by Elevate in stage 1. Then we went into APAC playoffs and we won the whole thing. And then we went into stage 2, came out first. It was all of a sudden, it was like everything's going well. We're on the up, like we're getting better. Obviously, second to first. Very competitive. We had other teams in other regions like looking at us saying these guys are good. They're going to make upsets at the major. We're all, we're going to doctors, getting the immunizations we needed, getting passports, like everything we need to go. And then about a week, I think it was like 9 days before we're supposed to fly out, we got a call that's like, sorry guys, but we just can't get you out of Australia. Like, there's no guarantee that we could ever get you back in, and it's irresponsible to take us out if they can't bring us back, obviously. And to be honest, like, that was like very devastating to the team. Like I said, we're on the up, improving. I think the next stage we came last. Like, the next stage we never recovered from that. I think some of us did, but I think some of us didn't, and that's understandable. It is a shame. I think we only needed to place 4th to make SI off points that year. And we just came last. Like, we could not beat anyone. We were, just mentally not really locked in as a team. We were terrible.
So, as a direct consequence, you feel that was like that moment where some players just couldn't get over that hurdle of the devastation, I guess.
Definitely. I think, I'm not going to like say who couldn't get over or anything, but there are players that have been playing for years, fighting to make a major their whole career. And then to finally do it and to have it taken away from you, it's out of your hands. Like, I can understand why it was so hard, to be honest. No, don't hold it against those guys at all. I think, it affected me too. We really crumbled after that. But it is what it is. Like, you have ups and downs in your career. I think when I look back at it and just staying composed and just realizing, all right, this is just like another step along the way. I think that was super important for me because, like, you look at it back then, And you could say like that was what I'd been working for 2 years, since Challenger League, and it sounds like such a big length of time and everything. But I look back now and it's like, yeah, that was devastating at the time, but I went to, 5 more. So, yeah.
I guess if you were to revert back though, like that, even up until the very start of 2023, like surely that just stuck in the back of your mind.
Yeah, no, yeah, it did.
No event for 2022 as well.
Yep, that's right. No, it really did. I think there were 2 times in my career where I just had to be really patient. I think the first was finally getting a Pro League trial, because I thought I was one of the better players in scrims, in Challenger League, in 10-mans, whatever, for, up to a year. And I saw my teammates get trials ahead of me and everything, and I was just a bit confused. I just had to be really patient and just say, okay, my time will come. A quote I really like is like, the cream will rise to the top, or whatever it is, however you say that properly. I really believe in that. Like, you put the work in, stay humble, keep your head down, eventually you'll get there. And I was patient in Challenger League, eventually got my spot on nights. And then I was patient again when it came to events. We narrowly missed out in 2022. We missed out by a single round that came down to a 1v1 to make Berlin, or was it 2v1 or something? But yeah, we just missed out. Literally one round. Like, a difference of 10 seconds on the clock in that round would have meant that we were going to Berlin. And it was hard. No, it was definitely really hard to convince myself that this is still worth pursuing. I remember when Knights left the scene and I had a choice: do I keep playing and join Team Bliss, or do I pack it up, basically? I remember thinking, like, this is probably my last shot, like stage 1, 2023.
Wow.
Like, if we don't make the major, even though it has seemed like for so long we were so good, it should have happened by now. But if it doesn't happen this stage, then I'm done, because I'm just chasing something that's not going to happen. And then, of course, stage 1, 2023, we went undefeated and made the major basically halfway through the season. So that went well. But if that didn't go the way it did, it could have been a different story. And I think if I wasn't patient, I probably would have, I would have quit earlier, to be honest.
Thrown the towel in. Yeah. I mean, it makes complete sense. We've seen lots of players do that across the course of the years, and the fact that chance, maybe, if you want to call it that, but also just determination brought you to 2023. 2022 so if we're moving out of the 2021 era, which many consider to be the golden age of APAC Siege, particularly O Siege. O Siege was thriving at that point. 2022 hits, you guys start performing phenomenally domestically. APAC South still seems like a little bit of a struggle, and this is where I might actually bring the ping conversation up, because for many players, the first year we all sat there and went, there's ping, but you're still playing, and fuck it, we're making majors, we're still competing against the best teams. 2022 hits, and it felt like there was a huge shift in the way that APAC South specifically went. I mean, how much of that was impacted by it?
Oh, I was absolutely crushed in 2022. I mean, if you remember, like, Chiefs literally folded right before a season. Like, they had a Pro League spot and they just gave it up. The team just didn't want to play. It was quite bad. I would say the ping was the same, to be honest. If anything, it was a little better in 2022 with the VPNs, everything like that. Actually, apart from ping bug was starting to be a thing, there's something changed in the server where Australians just get ridiculously high ping to C's just randomly. It happens sometimes. But yeah, I'm not going to say it's because of that. I think, in my opinion, my biased opinion, the main reason is because the C's teams really learnt how to play on ping. Instead of just trying to play the game, the correct fundamental way, they really learnt how to play on ping. It's all of a sudden, it's not the strategic game that we're used to. It's they're shoving a shield and 4 players through a doorway at the same time, and you can only kill one of them. That's basically how it goes. And in hindsight, like, the Australian teams, we didn't adapt well to that, and that's our problem. Like, to be honest, I respect results above everything, and I think that's mainly on us. But the fact is, in 2022, it was a ping league. Like, to be honest, like, everyone was playing to abuse it. So
yeah, it was a shame to have had what 2021 was, which I think we can all agree there was just such excitement around the league. We were all so wrapped. And not only that, but you guys were getting guns and skins and all of these different things that just we had never really seen before. It was just like, it was such a great moment 2022 hits, things just change so dramatically from an oceanic perspective, but still your performances stayed true, which I think is what led to 2023. I don't know do you want to touch on anything else throughout 2022? It's a bit of a like a bit of a blur.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a blur. Like, that's probably the year that the least happened in my career. Like, strangely enough to say. I think we won a bunch of O's tournaments and didn't really break ground in APAC South too much. Yeah,
you guys killed O's, by the way. Like, absolutely demolished most competition throughout O's, which is just so strange. But then 2023 hits, and the dawn of a new day for you, but not just you. Your brother, the Sage brothers, joined arm in arm. This was really exciting, if I can just say from a hosting perspective, because this is when I had decided to fully host. Coming into 2023, look, you can say whatever you want about the storylines, the teams that joined, the players that stayed on and left. This was fundamentally, yes, Bliss was going to be a great team, but the fact that you two were playing together, the fact we'd seen Brendo throughout Ground Zero performing really well, 2022 was looking good for him. Then we hit a brand new year and just everything shakes up. So can you tell me a little bit as to what it was like? Because obviously you would have seen your brother going through the iterations of Tier 2 to Tier 1 and, gaining more confidence, gaining a bit more ability. But then 2023 hits and you guys get the opportunity to play together.
It was a big change, to be honest. I mean, the bigger change came in 2024, like I mentioned earlier. But, I think when Knights left, it was either we make a team with Juicy, Josh, Brendan, and then our fifth was actually going to be Wet, weirdly enough.
Wow.
Or it was going to be I join the Team Bliss team and basically just be an addition to their roster. And we ended up going with the Team Bliss way. I can't actually remember why. Like, all the politics and everything that goes on behind the scenes, I don't remember. All I remember is we started playing scrims and we felt like a super team, to be honest. Back then, we won, I think, from when I joined to when we went to Copenhagen, we did not lose a single map of a scrim in OS.
That's insane.
Like, we won, it was like 80 something in a row. We either drew or won. And that it did feel like that. I mean, you look at the stage, we were 7-0-0. It was a big change. And for me, personally, playing with Brendan, I think it really inspired me to want to play even more and to be even more competitive at the start, because it now wasn't just about me. It wasn't just being selfish and raising myself up. I was now raising up my younger brother as well and bringing him to the world stage, not just bringing myself. Yeah.
Wow, there's something so beautiful about that. Like, kind of, I guess your legacy was no longer about Sageon, but rather just the first four letters of that, just the name,
right.
just the kinship, the familiarity of playing with a brother that obviously you've grown up with. So what was that like? I guess what was the blending point for you two joining a competitive roster together? Like, was there any friction at the start? Like, I've seen both of you boys in person. I've never seen a lot of friction between you. You're both very calm gentlemen, but surely there had to be some.
Yeah, I don't think Brendan and I have ever fought our entire
life.
We both fight with our older brother. We both think he is just an idiot, and we fight with him all the time. But we've never really fought with each other for whatever reason. Like, I'm the middle child, Brendan's the youngest. Never fought until we were in Manchester, actually. That's not 2023, but yeah, in Manchester we almost started to punch up with each other in the practice room one time. I can't remember why. We were very burnt out at that event. We'd been playing for months on end, no break. Got back from Brazil, started practicing straight away, basically flew to the UK like 6 weeks later or something like that. We were burnt out. Lots of arguments that trip. But other than that, no, there was no friction. I was always worried about like the team environment having two brothers, obviously, because we have,
of course,
like a closer connection than the rest of the team's going to have. But I don't think it ever affected us. I think it was a strength, like, more than anything. I think a lot of the time we kind of just understood each other and what each other are thinking without it needing to be said. I think it just it makes another link in the team just so simple and easy to deal with.
Did you boys ever play sport together growing up? Did you ever play Siege together growing up? Like, is that where this kind of connection came from?
We played a lot of sport together. He's 4 years younger than me. Yeah, 4 years.
Whoa.
Yeah, he's he's a lot younger than
That's
me.
significant to be playing sport with him. That is quite significant of an age
he was
gap.
good. We played footy, cricket, basketball. He was really good at basketball as a kid. So even though I'm a bit older and then my older brother's a bit older, he would join in and he would still, play really well, hold his own. He was really good at basketball as a kid. He was a great shooter, actually. But I think the main thing, we used to play Call of Duty together all the time. Like, all three of us would be, like, the weekend, we would jump on Call of Duty split screen, Black Ops 2 or whatever we were playing. We did that so much as kids. Like, we played for years. And then eventually, he really didn't like Siege. He was still playing Call of Duty when I started playing Siege. And then when I hit Pro League, he was like, oh, maybe I should give it a go. Started playing on PlayStation, and then he accelerated very fast from not playing the game to being in the competitive scene. It was just a few months, I think. Yeah.
I guess coming from like a FPS background, regardless of what kind of game you play, you have that mechanic understanding of how the game plays. Yeah. And look, Siege and COD, I would say the only direct link that I feel comfortable with is kind of the recoil on most guns. Like the way that the ADS works is very, well, at least from my perspective, it's very similar in COD to what it is in Siege. It's drastically different to something like CS or PUBG or even Valorant. Yeah, no, Valorant is still pretty different. So like Siege and COD, there is somewhat of a connection there. So look, the connection, we'll follow that connection all the way through because I think that there's something to it.
No, I think so too. Yeah, I think a lot of my mechanics were kind of built in COD, if I'm honest. There you go. That's what it is.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And then without kind of jumping the gun on 2023 a little here, jumping over 2023 to get to 2024, you actually get to go to your first major. Yep. We finally see you at an international event 2 years on from when you were meant to go to Mexico.
Yep.
What did that mean for you as an individual? It
actually meant so much. I don't think I've ever been as excited in my entire life as I have before I was getting on that plane to Copenhagen. It was also my first international flight ever. Like, I've traveled around Australia so many times, been everywhere. I'd never left Australia. And so to go to Copenhagen to play, Rainbow Six Siege, fly international, and also with my brother, it felt amazing. I think that was the case for all of us. I think we're all, like the entire team, we're a bit in awe of the whole experience. I think that's part of the reason we got absolutely smashed, but that's fine. Like I said, it's all like steps on the journey. Losing in Copenhagen was a very important step, to be honest. I think that's the best thing that could have happened to us, as weird as that is to say. But it was amazing. I remember our first day of prac at Copenhagen, we did a boot camp. We got set up at the Australis HQ, which was right in the middle of the city, amazing place. We're just playing Siege in the middle of Denmark. We were all a bit in awe. But our first day, we did 9 maps in a row against G2, and we just got absolutely slaughtered. And I think we did a whole week of that, just getting smashed by all these teams. And eventually, towards the end, we started getting some better results. But then we went to the actual stage and got smashed again. And that was a critical learning experience, to be honest. Very important.
What was the biggest takeaway from Copenhagen then? Was it the fact that you are just so far behind the curve in terms of playing international teams?
Yep.
Was it the fact that LAN just is a completely different environment? What was the biggest learning experience you had?
LAN was a very different environment. We had not set up our audio properly, everything but that. We should have probably figured that out at boot camp. And that's pretty easy to deal with. The main thing was our playstyle was just not up to par with the international teams at all. I remember we kind of just came away from that being okay, whatever we're doing, it's not working. We had the mechanical skill in our roster, we had the dedication, discipline, work ethic, but we just did not have the playstyle. And I think one of the people who actually highlighted that to us, weirdly enough, was Titan. I met with Titan right after the event, basically. Sat down, talked to him for a while, and he sat down and he just said, you guys are not playing the right way. You need to do this, you need to do that. And I remember he probably didn't think that I would make anything of it, but I went back, brought it to the team, and our Fisher guy was kind of oh yeah, we can do that. And then
that sounds like that to the tone. That sounds like Fisher guy.
Yep. And so we did it. We implemented it. We actually had a rougher stage too, but I think that was more to do with the roster change and everything. A bit of what's the word? Teething pains, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
But then when we got to the event, we were playing so much better. Like all of a sudden, we're not getting smashed. We've won our first game, and we're taking, some of the best NA and EU teams to, 7-8 match points, even though we lost. We're competing all of a sudden. So yeah.
And you mentioned earlier for you, Atlanta was kind of a bit more of an aha moment in terms of your international performance and kind of cracking into the scene. Is that like individually, did you just feel more mechanically adept in that kind of field?
I think it was more stage 2 that rose me up.
Okay.
Stage 2, we had really big struggles. I remember as a team, we were really struggling in OS. And a lot of the times we were winning, it was back to like the old Knights or Challenger League days where we were winning off like my back some of the times, yeah. And I remember Odah was having a really good stage as well. But other than that, like as a team, like no individuals are playing terribly, but we were struggling until right at the very end when we finally clicked on the last play day. But for the first 6 games, it felt like I had to do a lot, and that was a really good thing because when we went international, all of a sudden I was just fine with doing a lot. I wasn't trying to just fill my part. I was like trying to go above and beyond. And I think, it was back to, the old days of just trying to impart my game on the server and, doing whatever I can.
So there's a break between Atlanta and SI. Obviously, you guys finish first. You go to 2 international events. You're going to make SI. There's no doubt in anyone's mind at that point. But before we get to the results, you had to kind of carry, in respect to, what had happened in previous years, you had to carry, once again, like the old Knights roster. What was it that changed so quickly between Atlanta and Brazil? Like, what was that moment like? Because, I mean, to have to go from really struggling in stage 2 to whatever the fuck happened at the 6th Invitational Brazil, what happened for you individually as those months progressed? Because I think there's only like 2.5 months between the tournaments, 3 months. Like, there's not a lot of time.
To be honest, like, from a team perspective, I think we're already at a high international standard in Atlanta. I just think we had a bit of a mental barrier. A mental barrier about winning. Like, if you think about Atlanta, we were up, so many times we had match points and couldn't close it out, all of that. I think we finally got over that hurdle in between Atlanta and SI. It was like the belief at some point came in. I think that mental barrier was actually present in the group phase of 6 Invitational. I think we only finally broke through it when we finally won a map. We didn't win a game until we beat D+, but we took a map off phase, and that was like so important for us because that was the mental block was gone. Like we had been up 6-4, we'd been up 6-2, we'd been up, whatever, had the overtime favoured side, and we'd always lost, no matter what, leading up to that point. So taking bank off phase, I remember there was a moment where I think we were up 6-3 or 6-2, and then it ended up going to overtime. And then in the first round of overtime, we had a 5v3, and then somehow we all stopped talking, we just crumbled, and we lost the round. And I remember just like absolutely yelling at everyone, like, what are we doing? And I think in the moment, you probably shouldn't do that. That's not being a good teammate. But at the same time, I think that was probably exactly what the roster needed. And from that moment, we won the next 2 rounds of overtime, won the map, and it was like that was it. The mental block was gone. And after that, we lost map 3 against FaZe. They're, SI champion this year, SI grand finalist last year. Not too bad. But then we went on, we beat D+, we beat Fury, and we beat Wolves in the space of like 24 hours or something, all 3 of those games. And it was just like we broke through, and all of a sudden we were just in the zone. Individually, my role changed a lot from Atlanta somehow. I think it was mainly that everyone else kind of came into their own a bit more. Especially Brendan. Like Brendan was going crazy at SI, like I said. Wet was like seriously shot calling, basically being a secondary IGL to Fish. Odah was fitting his role really well. I think everyone just clicked. That's what happened at SA.
So you just kind of, I want to lean into the Brendo conversation here because this is really when Brendo just completely reversed any narrative about him as a player, him as an individual, him as a part of the team. he just absolutely dominated, right? We saw Six Invitational 2024 was kind of, I think for many of us at home, this was like the moment that we'd been waiting for you, for Fisho Guy, for this roster. So many of you had come so close to making it to international events and just kept missing the bar that you went from finishing 17th to 20th in Atlanta to finishing top 8 in the world at the Six Invitational. What did that mean for you to know that you were a top 8 team in the world at that point?
To be honest, like winning those games, it always felt so good because it was like finally like we're in this. We're not just like outsiders that have been given a small chance and we've missed it again. Like it, I think each loss was still devastating. To be honest, like it was just absolutely brutal playing the group stage day in day out, playing a game losing. But to finally break through and be winning, and then not just winning but competing with the good team, like it meant so much because finally we felt like we belonged there. It was our third event, and we'd never felt like we belonged there until we started competing. And yeah, that meant a lot. I think that being said, when we lost to G2, we were still like devastated. Like we thought, like, damn, like we were just so disappointed with ourselves. Not because we lost, but because it was a slip from us. Like we were not competing like we had been the days prior and everything like that. And I think for a few days after, we were very disappointed, very upset. But that being said, like when we look back on it, you know, a couple months later or now, we look back and say that's a really successful event.
That was the most successful we'd seen an Australian team do for such a long time. Like Fnatic way back in like 2019, 2018, maybe Wildcard. Like no, Wildcard Tokoname. Like that's the closest I feel OS has ever been to making a main stage and upsetting teams. Yeah. It's one thing, actually, you know what? How about we throw it back to Odah's interview a little bit here? He said that when, like, going into the G2 game, the mentality had shifted a little bit because you'd gone from winning a couple of strings to game to making top 8. In his eyes, he felt as though, like, you guys had done it. You guys had done what you came to do. Yeah. Do you feel that too? Do you feel that mentality weighed on that G2 game a little? Like, you'd already overachieved what you could ever have hoped to have done?
No, to be honest, in my career, I never felt that. And I think, like, I always was very strongly opinionated about this. Like, if you feel that, then you're not really set as a competitor, in my opinion. Like, if you're there to, you know, hit a point where you're happy or, you know, where the narrative aligns for you, then, like, yeah, you're just not going about it the right way, in my opinion. I think every game, no matter, you could be the biggest underdog, like, you know, possible. If you're not going into that hoping or trying your absolute hardest to win it because you're hungry for the win, then it's just not true competitiveness, in my opinion. And that's a mentality that should change, I think. And I think we felt that a lot of the time. I think that was true in Atlanta too. I think when we beat Wolves in the best of one, that was like showing the world, like, yeah, we can compete with these teams from EU, NA, whatever. I think some people thought that too. It was like, oh, we've won a game, that's it. Like, you know, we've proven we belong here. But for me, it was never like that. Ever. It was always like every single game. It didn't matter who we were playing, didn't matter what it was for. It was like, I want to win that game. And I was never done until the other day when I tweeted that I'm retiring. Like, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty fair a fair statement to have made as well. Because look, sometimes you got to know when to hang it up. But we're still not even there yet. This is what's crazy about your career, and especially the last 3 years. Like, it's just been phenomenal to watch strength to strength. How you've changed as a player as well, from going as the top fragger and needed in every game to all of a sudden 2024 hits and things change. Your brother steps up. You know, Odah and Wettable start to fall into their roles a little better. Fisho's just doing what Fisho's done for the last 5 years. I feel like I said this to you just before the interview started. It's really like, regardless of international events or anything like that, you and Fisho have been performance-wise the most consistent players throughout our entire time in Siege. Like, you look back when Fisho was on the roster with Chiefs, did phenomenally well, moved to Bliss, did phenomenally well despite not being an APAC South. But for you, ever since you've joined Knights, up until 2024, you were always the number one player. You were always looked at as the player that could really change the entire tides of a game. 2024 hits, things change after Brazil a little, and then we see a new Bliss enter stage 1, and once again just completely slap the tournament around in Oss. But you go to Manchester, and how is the team energy there? Because you said that you get into a little bit of a tuft with your brother. You nearly throw hands.
Yep.
What's happened in Manchester that causes this kind of controversy?
No, I mean, first of all, I think stage 1, I think I always performed when the pressure was at its highest. I think that's when I performed the best. And so, like you said, I was always thought of as the number 1 player on a roster that could change the tide of a game. I think that's because there was always pressure on me. And so I always felt the need to rise and to play that way. Stage 1, there was, to be honest, there was no pressure. Stage 1 of 2023 and of 2024, there was no pressure. There was no way we were losing any of those games, really. I would never say that during a season or as a competitor. Obviously, anyone can beat anyone, understand. But there was no pressure. We breezed through those seasons. But we still worked really hard to get there. That doesn't mean that we're just showing up and winning games. And that ties into what happened in Manchester, because we basically trained for months for SI. We went to Brazil, we came back, and then we were like, oh, hang on, stage 1's in 2 weeks. We cannot have a break. We took a weekend off. It was, that was it. And then we're back every single day training. And for me, I was also working at the time. I was working full time while training, basically, taking breaks to go to events, obviously. But I was doing really long days, 16, 17, 18-hour days of work. And then, Manchester comes along. It was, personally, it was a tough time. I was moving from Melbourne to Brisbane right as I was supposed to be flying out.
Traitor.
Yep. And then, we don't talk about that. It's fine. I'll be back one day. We had a lot of problems with our apartment when we first moved in, all that. But anyway, I'm not trying to make excuses for myself. I was definitely burnt out, however, and the team as a whole was burnt out. We didn't have a lot of breaks. And we got knocked around in scrims in Manchester by basically everyone. We'd gone back from Brazil, where we were competing. We were, even in scrims, no matter what team it was, we were putting up good numbers, good results. Manchester, we show up and we're like, we can't beat anyone. And I think that really weighed heavily on the team. And it weighed heavily on everyone to the point where we were getting impatient with each other about the smallest, stupidest things. Our boot camp was, it was amazing boot camp, great facility, but we were just constantly frustrated with each other. And that's just just being together so much for so many months and being away from home, everything like that, it just weighs on you. And I actually can't remember what it was that Brendan and I actually got angry at each other about. But whatever it was just one of those things you look back a couple of days later, you're like, why the hell were we so angry? But no, it did happen. Everyone loves to laugh about it. Everyone has a good joke about it. How scared they were in that room. No, it's good.
Oh, that's good.
We move on pretty quick.
Good. Yeah, I feel like there's no love like brotherly love, but there's also no beef like brotherly beef.
No, that's true. Yep.
I've seen I have my fair share of bouts with my brothers as well, so I can fully understand how people do not want to get involved.
No,
they don't even
they
want
don't
to
know
look
what to do.
in the direction.
It's
That's awkward, right? Because you're on a team with your brother, and it's for you two. Yes, you're on a team, but it's also a different environment. You've grown up together. You've seen it all. You and Brendo both go in on your other brother. I can completely see where that where the lines blur a little. So Manchester's a little more difficult for the team. It definitely just doesn't click like it did in Brazil. And look, maybe some of that as well is the pressure of performing like you did in Brazil and making once again another top 8. I'm sure that weighed even heavily on more heavily on the team than potentially even just turning up and being able to perform, because that's just such a huge feat to have to run it back once again and do what most thought was unachievable for an O's team. But to be fair, there's a lot of months in a row where it kind of just keeps pushing, right? You've got the November Major. I think in January we had another wrecked preseason tournament, straight into Brazil, straight into stage 1, straight into Manchester. Things are rolling really rapidly, which then after Manchester you kind of get, I don't want to say you get a break, you get a month before EWC. The timeline for EWC was once again just so short. how did that, I guess, weigh on? Well, actually, no, sorry. The qualifiers for EWC were within a month. I shouldn't say, because I think they were in August that you ended up going to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's right.
So EWC comes around and you guys qualify for it, but having known now what we know about, just speaking to you now about Manchester Major and all of that fun stuff, how does the team feel going into EWC and competing once again on the international stage?
To be honest, I think there are two parts to. We felt worse. I'll say that now. There are two parts to it. Part A is that the cracks of Manchester never fully healed, if that makes sense. And I'm not talking about between me and my brother. I'm talking about just the weight of expectation that kind of affected us in Manchester, and then the disappointment of not meeting that expectation. I think that puts a lot of pressure, like a lot of strain on the roster when you don't meet expectations. And we never truly got over that. And at the same time, we brought Titan in as our coach before EWC. And like I said, he originally told us we're not playing the right way and we need to change our play style. We went through that again, but to a whole new play style. And so this one's a lot more complicated, takes a lot more effort to basically nail down. And we were basically just learning that right before EWC. And I think none of us really foresaw it taking so long or putting so much strain on the roster. But the truth is that it did. And so when we got to EWC, we were, nowhere near the team we were even in Manchester, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, we basically didn't perform. We beat LG, but yeah, that felt a bit like an OS game, if I'm honest. Yeah, we didn't really perform when it came down to it on main stage against Space Station, and our liquid game was okay, but yeah, we got beaten pretty easily by them as well. So we weren't the competitive team that people expected to show up, and a lot of that is just due to our own basically mispreparation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a funny thing trying to juggle expectations, because all of us at home had expected Bliss to kind of after Brazil just be a competitive force in the international scene, and that's not to say that you weren't. This is where that, when you are only putting yourself against where you were, at that last tournament, it is so hard to kind of look retrospectively. I'm sure you would look back now and go, if we took the expectations away from those tournaments, things would have been vastly different. You wouldn't have had the pressures of a waiting feeling like you weren't going to amount to the previous tournament. And that kind of just follows on for the rest of 2024, or so it seemed from the outside. So I'm going to ask you the question that I tried to ask you day one, stage two, which is about the Odah move.
Sure.
So much has been talked about from the pundits, of course, myself and fellow commentators and analysts, because that's what we get paid to do. We get paid to stir shit up. Not really. We get paid to hopefully try to analyze things. Hey, we do stir a fair bit of shit up. To be fair, I'll put my hand on my chest and say sometimes we stir some shit up. But right after EWC, it kind of feels like everything's just amounting to something needing to change or to break. And regardless of whether that led to Odah, getting benched, which again, we need to make sure that everyone at home realizes he got benched and then left on his own accord. He did not get kicked from the roster or anything like that. But regardless, all of that happens. How are you feeling throughout this time? Because you've gone from the highs of 2023, making your first event, to the start of 2024 being one of the most competitive teams we've ever had in OS on the international stage and domestically as well, to now kind of, I guess, the weight of expectations just weighing on the entire roster, yourself included. How does it feel once Odah leaves the roster and we get towards stage two?
I mean, to be honest, I don't look back and think, we should have done something different, or look back and have regrets. I think at any given point in my career, I can truthfully say that I put my all into playing and I put my all into decision making. And for that reason, I don't look back and think, should we have done this different? Because given, knowing what I knew back then, I made the decisions that I thought were right. And so I stand by that. I mean, I think the roster in stage 2 last year definitely felt the weight of expectation. It wasn't, I don't even think it was the Odah move necessarily. I think it's also the big org support. all of a sudden we've gone from a small Australian org to having a big international, basically, huge organization backing us, paying us full time. I think that is a very underrated part of the story, is that like, no matter how well you prepare for it and mentally deal with it, that puts pressure on you when you know that you're playing against people that basically don't get paid. I think that is probably, you're right about the weight of expectation. It is probably the hardest pressure to deal with in sports and in esports is expectation. And I think that definitely affected our roster last year. Yeah.
How did that impact you personally?
Personally, I don't think I feel it that much, to be honest.
Sure.
It impacted me personally in like how I deal with the team and address the team and make sure everyone is, thinking about the right things, blocking out the right things, that kind of thing. But personally, I've never felt it. Like I said, like, pressure helps me play well, is what I've always thought in my career. And expectation pressures, it's not different to me. It's different, but it still helps me, if that makes sense. So yeah, didn't affect me personally too much.
No, I can understand that. I mean, speaking to you for the last, realistically, if we think about our friendship, I'm talking about personally, over the last 3 or 4 years, I don't think there's ever been a time where I've spoken to you and I've felt like that pressure was mounting. Like we hung out a fair bit kind of around your games throughout the Sixth Invitational 2024, and never once did that seem to weigh on you like it weighed on some of the others, for example, especially when you guys started doing well. When people's expectations start to turn, there's just completely different conversations that I had about the roster, and I guess that kind of just flows on throughout the rest of this year and into stage 2. How did you cope with, I guess, not meeting the team's expectations? Because this was the very first time it had ever happened domestically. Internationally, sure, we'd seen this happen from time to time with host teams, but domestically, this was the first real massive hurdle that we'd seen you guys encounter, which was toward the end of stage 2. And look, there was a fair amount of controversy on the last play day for the grand final and all of those things. What was going through your head? What was going through your heart at that time?
I mean, to be honest, like, it's like any loss. Like, I take every single loss hard, no matter what it is. Like I said, losing to G2, even though we'd made top 8, that was still a really tough loss for me. And this was no different. Like, it's a tough loss, but I've always had the mentality that you can't always win. Like, that, it's a sport at the end of the day. There's winners, there's losers. Whether you win or lose, if you put all your effort into it, you can be proud of it. And yeah, that's how I felt still. That being said, it's very hard to lose, like I said. That was one of the harder ones for sure, because we missed out not only on the major but also on Six Invitational. It set us back, a long time. But yeah, I think there's steps to success in any stage of your career. I don't think, like you said, the expectation is that we would make every single event, and I think that expectation is probably the most incorrect thing about the whole situation, is because realistically nobody can be perfect. It doesn't matter how much better you are. Like, there's always going to be times where you have your lows, and then there's always going to be times where you have your highs. That's just the nature of sports, really.
It's a tough one because unfortunately the story for you has now ended. You've decided to hang up the keyboard and mouse in that respect. So looking back on your career, are you proud of it?
Yeah, I'm proud of it. Yeah, like I said, like, every single season that I played, I had, thoughts to myself like, okay, am I good enough to do this? Am I willing to give it my all? And every single time the answer was yes, and then I stuck through with that, gave it my all, did everything I absolutely could to win. And then, this season came around and I decided, no, that's it for me. But to be honest, I am very proud of my career. Even though, like you said, there have been times where we haven't met expectations, like after Mexico, stage 2 last year. But when I look back at my career, I don't really think about those things very much, like, at all. I think about the highs, and I think about what I achieved regardless of those, basically, falls. And I think that's all you can do as a professional athlete, esports professional, whatever. I think that's the key. And I'm proud of the times that I won. I'm also proud of the times that I lost, because I was still giving it my all and putting up a high quality of gameplay and, maintaining the team environment to a high standard towards the end. Yeah, I don't think I can expect anything more of myself.
And then I guess the question that all sports stars and athletes alike get asked at the end of their career. I got the three main ones for you.
Yep.
And the first one we'll address because it's a great way to cap it off. But how did you know this was the right time? Because, you know, this is esports where you could just play and play and play and never know when that moment arrives. It's a bit different to sport, but how did you know that this was the right moment?
I think there's a few reasons that this kind of like ended up being the right moment. I think reason one is every season, like I said, I would ask myself, am I still good enough to do this? And then this year I kind of realized the answer is never going to be no. So that is not a good way to decide when my career is over.
Holy shit.
So I think, yeah, that kind of opened up my thinking a little bit. And then I realized at some point, like, I love competing, I love doing it, but I've been doing the same thing for years and years. At some point, I need a new experience, and I need to develop and grow as a person, and that, you know, I need to leave the server for that to happen. And thirdly, I think I'm always looking at what the team needs, even in deciding whether I should play or not. And when we kind of decided that, yeah, we're going to get international players for the roster, I kind of thought, like, this could be a good opportunity. Like, bring in an international talented player into my spot, and then I can fill the gap that I saw in the team, which is someone to manage the team expectations, you know, team thoughts, basically the whole team environment. I think we're really Titan is an incredible coach. He's a great strategic mind, but he will admit himself he's probably still developing his ability to maintain the team environment. And we really needed someone who wasn't a player that could do that. And either we got two players and we looked for someone who could do that, which is a very tall ask, I think, or I moved to fulfill that role and we got a third player. So basically all those things aligned, and I decided it was time.
Well, I was actually I was going to completely ignore the import discussion, but you've already brought it up and you've already given your thoughts on it. How do you think that this is before I ask the final two questions? But how do you think it's going to impact the league? How do you think that this shapes things up? Because obviously, you know, competing internationally yourself, you know the difference between even the smallest players in EU versus the best players in OS. You can see that there is just something that is different in that. So what do you think that the imports will bring to Oceania and to the wider region?
I think the biggest difference that they will bring is professionalism. I think OS as a whole, I've talked about this a lot today, but I think OS lacks a little bit of professionalism. I think you're going to see another standard of professionalism from the team with the EU guys, to be honest. They're all like super, super talented players, and I'm not going to talk about what they can do on the server. I'll let them show that themselves. But yeah, I think the professionalism has really stood out to me, and I think that's something that will stand out to the rest of the region too.
Wait, you're telling me Jake Henner isn't the pinnacle of professionalism in esports?
Not quite. He's up there. Not quite the top. No.
I think I've seen more of his forehead than I have my own mother over the last year. But on a note that I guess can kind of maybe lay a little path for those looking to get in this line of work.
Yep.
It's a two-parter. One, what is the biggest obstacle that you've faced in this journey? And two, what would be probably the best piece of advice you'd have for someone looking to become an esport player or even just transition from tier 2 to tier 1?
Yeah, okay. The biggest obstacle, to be honest, I think not necessarily for me, but the biggest obstacle you'll have as a player trying to get up is networking. I think networking is so important, especially in a small region. There are very few teams that compete at the highest level. You should focus on your play in the server, obviously, and work hard. I think people don't really realize how hard professional players work. They think they just play some ranked and then jump in the server, do the strat that's on the dock for them. It's not like that. Professional players, like, they really train themselves. They do aim training, they do mental training, they focus on how to be focused, actually, funnily enough. I think focus is probably one of the biggest hurdles that players have, especially nowadays with shorter attention spans, if I'm being honest. Focus is so important in esports. It's really important in sport. It's really, like, a lot more important in esports. You need to be absolutely focused. I think that is another big hurdle that a lot of players face, is they get the skill, they get the understanding, but then they can't focus, whether it's on match day or in, across a long match. I can't understate the value of being able to focus. So if you research that, you look at that while you train hard, train your mechanics, train your knowledge, watching other good pro teams, and you'll do quite well. And then, like I said before, patience is a big key. If you're doing well, you're working hard, you're being professional. There's a saying I heard the other day. I think it's hungry yet humble. If you're embodying those things, then you'll make it. To be honest, yeah.
I actually think that would sum your career up. Hungry yet humble.
Yep. Yeah.
This is probably the first time we've ever really been able to cut the shit and just talk directly in a social platform, right? We've done this plenty off stream, but being able to do this in a way that the public will be able to see, I think that many would be shocked to find that you have such a deep burning hunger for this game, and it might not even be just for the game, but for your performance in general. And it seems to be, a hallmark of what we've seen from you over the years, which is you've never talked shit outwardly. I've never heard anything. No one has ever said a bad word about you, which fucking sucks, because sometimes I just wish you ripped into someone. But the fact of the matter is, you have throughout your entire career remained humble. You've remained the best player or one of the best players in OS. And I think that small little saying will pretty much, you could slap that next to your name, and that would forever be your legacy. I've just slapped that again. That would forever be your legacy. But speaking of legacy, let's finish it on a bittersweet note. Looking back on your 5-6 years of playing and all of the things that you've achieved, all of the obstacles you've overcome, all of the people you've met along the way, what is your takeaway from your career? What is the highlighting, the crowning moment from what you've done?
I wouldn't say there would be one crowning moment, weirdly enough. I think it's just, the bulk of achievement over time. I think the crowning moment for me is now when I can look back and say that I gave my all for 5 straight years, to be honest. I lost some, won some, whatever, MVP, not MVP, doesn't really matter to me when I look back and I say that every single stage, I was absolutely trying my hardest. And I'm very proud to say that. And I can look back and I think that is my best achievement, is the consistency over time, I think is the key. And that is because of the dedication basically never wavering, in my opinion. And the other thing that I would say I'm most proud of, or you talked about legacy, the legacy that I have is I'm a lot older than most of my teammates now, and for the last year or two. And I really hope I help some of those guys in their lives as well as, in their careers. I think obviously I can help them in their careers, but helping them in their lives is also super important to me. A lot of these guys, they're younger, still living at home, not a lot of life experience. And I really find value and fulfillment in helping them realize who they want to be and what they want to do, I guess. Yeah.
Well, taking over the reins and the management of the roster, I think will keep you well tied to the community and to being able to impact those who are the next generation, regardless of whether they already have a high standard, like, your European players that are coming in, the Brendos of the world. I think that you've got a lot to work with there. As I always do, my friend, I'll give you the floor here. Do you have anything you'd like to say? I guess this is kind of like the recap of your career, the thanks you want to give, anything like that, maybe the fuck yous. I'm sure there might be a couple that's hidden away behind that stoic gesture of yourself, but genuinely, mate, this is your open floor.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the platform and inviting me to do this. Glad I did it. So thanks for having me. I think, to be honest, I'd just like to thank everyone that I was a teammate with, or I was coached by. I think everyone helped me along the way and was a part of my journey, in their own way, whether how big or how small. Some teammates I played with for years, like Juicy, or now Fisher, Brendo, Wet, and some I played with for a month. No matter what, all those players helped shape me to the player and the professional I became. So thank you. The same goes for coaches, whether they're full coaches, performance coaches, they all help me along the way. So thank you. And then I guess, they would probably never hear this, but thank you to the organizations who sponsored me and helped me live out my dream of being a professional esports player.
Sage, you're a true gentleman in and out of the server, mate. I wish you nothing but the best of luck in whatever it is you do next. I know GG is obviously going to be lucky to have you on their management team, but who knows what you'll continue to achieve or where you'll go. I know that you'll keep in close contact, or at least I'll force you to in some way, shape, or form.
Course,
but for everyone at home, thank you very much for watching. This has been Sage's last word as a player, if you will.
Thank you.
And I think that that's a beautiful little moment for a career that has spanned across 5 years and has been at the pinnacle of the OC sports industry. But thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.